Hello, everyone. Want to call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody, and I'd like to invite former Principal John McGee to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right. Yeah. He probably remembers.
Right over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, John. Okay, I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Do we have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Good. No report out on closed session items. Staff presentations and information. Item 8.1, fourth annual report of the Torrance Unified School District Independent Citizens Oversight Committee. Prop 39, T&U General Obligation Bonds. Dr. Stowe.
Thank you, Mr. Lee and members of the board. This is the fourth year for this annual report to come before the board. We have, as part of Prop 39, we have an independent citizens oversight committee for all of our bond measures. And so we're fortunate to have 13 individuals serve the community for all of the bond measures, Y, Z, T, and U. So I would like to recognize John McGee, former principal in TUSD, and member of the committee, longtime member of the committee is here. And Carl Walter, who's our past chairman, is going to, I think, present the report.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, sorry, Carl. We also have our current chairperson, Dina Sakita, in the back.
Stand up so we can see you. Yeah, there she, okay.
You want to do that, Dina? Okay. Our committee meets regularly as a citizen oversight subcommittee, but the subcommittee looking at the warrants and the bond issues meets every month, and we review quite a few items. I think we reviewed over 1,000 warrants last year and did raise issues on over 100 of them that got resolved. All the issues were resolved. There are no outstanding issues, and we have no outstanding problems to report. It's all going according to the plan. We have checked to make sure the expenditures fit the rules and that the expenditures were legal and logical. So I can say that, we did a good job. I'd like to present the report then to the committee for your acceptance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. I also want to point out, and I thought he was downstairs with a bunch of North High students, but he made his way up here. One of the new members of our committee, Ron Matali'i, is in the back. So thank you all for our service.
Good. 8.2 is kind of in the same thing.
It's all part of the same
Right,
report
okay.
that the performance audit that was done by the auditor and then approved by the committee.
Good, thank you.
This is the 10th report.
10th report for Y and Z, if you can believe it.
Some ways it seems like yesterday, and other ways it seems like it was a long, long time ago. But anyway, as I get older, that happens all the time. Report from the Torrance Education Foundation.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here again. I'll preface my remarks with an apology because at this time of year, what I'm up here doing is raising money. And I'm going to hit you all up to think about supporting the things that we're trying to raise money with this year. Our car raffle continues on sale. You can raise money for your individual schools, school clubs, school classrooms by purchasing car raffle tickets for $30, and $20 will come back, if you designate it, to your campus for whatever purpose you choose to designate. And we are selling tickets and sponsorships, etc., for the annual gala, which this year, I'm sure you've heard me say before, is a special one because we are celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. So the Silver Gala is coming up on May 4th, at which point we will also draw the winner of the vehicle, which is a beautiful Lexus from our friends at Toyota. I do want to say thank you to, I'd like to call out Jerry Lynn Mock and her help with all of the work that goes into getting scholarship applications together for our committee to review the scholarships that are funded by sponsors that work with us. She's always on top of it, and our committee very much appreciates her help. They're working on their scholarship selections right now, and that will be announced later, but I just wanted to be sure everyone knows how much we appreciate her support. Can I answer any questions? Anybody want to make a donation to the auction at the gala?
Mr. Lee got his car tickets.
Yeah, I bought 3 car tickets.
I can sell you tickets tonight if you want.
I already bought 3.
Okay.
But your teachers all have a form in their room, of which,
Yes,
you know, if you want to support your classroom where your kids are going, your teacher should have a form, and you can fill it out rather easily and
yes.
contribute.
And you can also, I should say, find information on our website at www.tef4kids.org and look for the car raffle, and there's lots of information about how you can support your school, how you can get a form, how you can find an ambassador at your campus who can answer questions for you, all those things. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
8.4, report from the Council of PTA. Nanette is not able to meet with us tonight. So 8.5, report by student I can't say that, but Mr. Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I'd like to introduce Jason Tinty, West High ASB President, who will give the student representative report.
Good evening, President Lee, TUSD School Board, Cabinet, and guests. My name is Jason Tinty, and I'm the student representative from West High. Currently on campus, we are going through our WASC accreditation, so we have our campus in pristine condition, everything clean, all students aware to make sure to be on their best behavior, and so we hope to get through this and not have them come back for 6 years.
God, he has been coached so well.
And so for activities, we have our Olympics coming up this next week. Right now we are getting prepared by making posters for all the participants who volunteered or we reached out to. And it's just so we can decorate the quads and get everyone in the mood to compete, but to make sure to have a focus on just coming together through friendly competition. Our Olympics range from like your regular athletic games of like track and field, we have soccer, and we also go out to play some video games also. Students love that. And this past Friday, I was fortunate enough to go to the LCAP meeting where there were very constructive where we had like a good discussion of things that students find at schools that need improvement, or just our ideas of things that could possibly be better or change. And as the freshmen, sophomores, juniors, they are scheduling for their next year's classes, I wish for some exceptions to be made on the rule of taking one credit or one subject credit over the summer. I feel like, I understand where the rule comes from, but when there's a student trying to further themselves by taking the online class to clear up a space for another academic class, I feel like the exception should be made rather than them just taking the class so they can leave early from school. And that's it. Thank you.
And just an FYI, we appreciated Jason and the other 10 students that were with us on Friday. It was a great meeting. It's something that I know Dr. Crumpy and I look forward to every year whenever we have those students come in, and they have always given us very good feedback on exactly where we are. So I appreciated Jason. I told him that, and the other students who were with us.
And Dr. Crumpy, since you will be here to the end of the meeting, and so will Dr. Crumpy, we hope, you may be able to bring that up with her as far as the extra classes in the summer online and have a discussion with her. And since this is your last meeting, we are going to give you a gift of high perceived value. You get your picture taken by Tammy and everything. The official.
Jason, do you know where you're going to school yet? Not yet. Oh, shucks, sorry. This is the hardest time, is the waiting.
Wasn't that a Tom Petty song? Yeah, it was. Okay, well, that's good. There's some younger members on the board. I didn't expect them to know it, but maybe the older ones like us would know that. Anyway. Good news student presentations from Anza and Jefferson. We'll start with Dr. Kim.
Thank you, President Lee. It's my pleasure to introduce our student leader from Anza Elementary School, Luke Esquibel. Please come on up. Let's give him a round of applause, everyone. Also joining us tonight is the principal of Anza Elementary School, Mrs. Barb Marks. Thanks for being here. Luke, what's happening at Anza these days?
All right. Good evening. My name is Luke Esquibel, and I'm a 5th grade student at Anza Elementary School. Today I will be talking about what makes being a 5th grade student at Anza Elementary School special. One special thing that 5th graders do at Anza is switch classes for each subject. We have a different teacher for reading, writing, math, science, and social studies. This helps prepare the 5th grade students for middle school. By having a teacher specialized in each subject, we get to learn a lot more. Let me give you a few examples. In science, we learn a lot through hands-on experiments, which teaches us about topics such as evaporation and chemical reactions. However, we also learn a lot through research projects. For example, we are currently focusing on Earth's main spheres, the geosphere, biosphere, atmosphere, and hydrosphere. We are gathering information from different sources to write a report on each one of these spheres. In math, not only are we learning the essential standards, but we are also having fun learning about the stock market. We pretend to buy stocks and monitor their success. Currently, my team has bought shares in the Hershey's Company, and it is doing really good. It has gone up $10 in the last 3 months. In writing, we are working on opinion pieces. I am working on the topic of, should video games be considered sports? Believe it or not, as much as I do love video games, I do not consider them as sports. As you can see, a lot of academic learning goes on as an Anza 5th grader, but another special thing we do is focus on character development. As a 5th grade student, you can be part of Anza's Character Counts team. Character Counts is a group of students that encourage Anza students to work on having good character. At each Monday's flag assembly, the Character Counts committee announces to the school the character theme of the month. Examples of themes are responsibility, kindness, and trustworthiness. Academics and character development are only a few examples as to what makes being a 5th grade Anza student special. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Egan, will you introduce Jefferson Middle School?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lee. I'd like to introduce from Jefferson Middle School, Arya Patel. Please come on up. Also representing Jefferson Middle School is Principal Yvonne Marin.
Hello, my name is Arya. I am an 8th grader at Jefferson Middle School, and just a couple of weeks ago, I was one of the students who went to the Catalina Island Marine Institute, or more commonly known as CME. Now, Jefferson is one of the very few schools that send their students to CME, but why should other schools send their students to CME? CME's offered me and a bunch of other students an experience you cannot find here in Torrance. They teach you things that you probably have never heard of. Like, did you know that algae is in most of our food products? Like ice cream, ramen, even hot chocolate, Swiss Miss. Surprising, right? You can learn so much more on that island that will shock you even more than this. It also helps us work on our responsibility. Being independent is a key skill for our future, and CME helped me achieve that skill. Another thing is that you can strengthen friendships. The people I bunked with were not very close with me before, but after a long night of just talking and talking and talking, we grew closer than before. There was also team building exercises that helped strengthen the bonds between me and classmates I didn't really know so much. Now, also in CME, I was able to get away from all the stress at school. CME gave me a breath of fresh air. It helped me regain my thoughts, so when I got back to school, I was refreshed and ready to learn. Another thing is that CME pushes us out of our comfort zone. For example, a lot of people felt it was very hard to go snorkeling. But after we did it, a lot of us felt accomplished and we had the best time. Finally at CME, you can have fun. It is a relaxing, and all the labs they offer is amazing fun and always makes us want to learn more. That is why sending students to CME is worth the time and the money. So I hope that next year I hear more fun stories from other students from other schools about all the fun they had at CME. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I went to Jefferson for a little while. Okay, Nerd Camp presentation, Dr. Crumpy.
Thank you. I'd like to call up Alex Ross and Jackie Ryan, who are here to nerditize you tonight.
Who doesn't like a little bit of nerd good news now and then, right? Good evening, Dr. Lee and members of the board. Alex and I, Dr. Sorry, well, Mr. Lee. I had doctor written
You're
down.
Doctor of Nerdology, too. Everyone's an honorary doctor in this game, so there we go.
You're using up some of our 5 minutes, Alex. So Alex and I would like to invite you to our first annual Nerd Camp SoCal, which is a 2-day literacy unconference that will take place at my alma mater, Torrance High School, on July 18th and 19th this summer. And this is a conference for both students and educators. So this event is completely free to everyone who wants to attend. And in addition to all of our educators and authors that we have, or students that we have invited, we also have 50 authors and illustrators who are coming and waiving their presentation fees to be a part of our Nerd Camp, which we're very, very excited about. So I'm going to talk about the first day, and then Alex will pick up the second day. So day 1, which is July 18th, is going to be Camp Nerdling. And Camp Nerdling is designed for Torrance students for grades 2 through 9. And during Nerdling, students will be able to meet with 3 different authors, as well as take place in a makerspace and an inquiry lab. And they'll be able to leave with whatever they made in that makerspace. They'll have their questions answered, and they'll also be able to leave with a free book signed by one of the authors that they got to meet with. And the parents for that event will be able to come into the Torrance High Auditorium and be a part of a presentation from head librarian at the Torrance Public Libraries, Evan Coates, as well as the motivational educational speaker, Ernest Morel, coming down from Notre Dame, so that's exciting. And we also have, we're going to show the documentary Science Fair to help enrich that part of the STEAM experience.
So I am going to talk about briefly day 2, which is Nerd Camp. So a little bit later, we'll have a little gift for everyone. Nerd Camp registration opens on March 25th, which is next Monday. That's just for Torrance educators at first. And then on April 15th, we're going to open up the registration to everybody else. So Nerd Camp that Friday is open to all local educators, and even some non-locals will be coming in. Nerd Camp is a free unconference. So if you're wondering what an unconference is, it is an opportunity for the writers, our teachers, other teachers, illustrators to come and learn and lead is the slogan Jackie and I came up with. And so we are going to have a giant whiteboard up with basically painter's tape up, and teachers and educators, illustrators, authors, all of them are going to come equipped with questions they want to explore, topics they want to address, and basically learn and lead in this conference. So it's kind of, we call it an unconference because there is no traditional keynote speaker, there's no set schedule, there is no 75-slide PowerPoint where you just sit and listen. So it is not a sit and get in any traditional way. The whole idea of this is to learn about new strategies and ideas and broaden your professional network and just have fun and have an exciting time. So having said that, this started last summer with a little seed of a dream. Now we are just waiting. Like Mr. Lee said, the waiting is really the hardest part. We're waiting for next summer. And none of this could be possible without all the people who have sort of helped us along the way, and there's been a lot of them, so I'm going to turn it back over to Jackie to thank some people.
So we'd first like to thank Barnes & Noble, who will be hosting a one-week kickoff for Nerd Camp. We're going to have 3 days of book signings with all of our authors that are coming, and they will be signing at Barnes & Noble Torrance. They're also going to have their books for sale at the place, and there's going to be different activities. A lot of our authors are used to doing hands-on activities with students, and so they're going to be bringing those activities to Barnes & Noble. And they're going to be using this as a fundraiser for Nerd Camp as well, which is very nice of them. Our partnership with Follett has really paid off, not only for Follett, but for us. And McGraw-Hill and Teacher Created Materials all made monetary donations to us for Nerd Camp in order to get it off the ground. In addition to Follett, the company, our actual private rep that we use, Ken Krug and his family, purchased 15 copies of 15 different books for us in order to pass out to our participants. And then obviously we could not have done this without Susan Swinburne and Torrance Ed Foundation, who have helped us plan our welcome gala that we're going to be having for all of our writers at the Doubletree. And the Doubletree is also going to be, they set aside a bunch of rooms for our authors at a discounted rate so that they could all stay locally for the 2 days and not have to drive back and forth. So we're very, very lucky to have so much support from the community for, well, we call it the little engine that could, because it really did start it as a dream. And every time we text something cool, we just go choo-choo. It's kind of a little thing that we've done now. So we're very excited, and we hope you all can make it in July to Torrance High to join us for Nerd Camp SoCal.
I think we said this, but it's all free. Everything's free. So the writers are donating their time. We're opening it all up for free. So the kids are going to be free, and all the participants are going to be free.
We have buttons for all of you if you are interested.
Did you say what age range it will cover?
Yes. So for which one? For Nerd Camp or Nerdling?
Either one.
So
Either one.
Nerdling, so Camp Nerdling is grades 2 through 9 for next school year. And so all of our elementary and our middle schools all have registration forms out and boxes for them to sign up. And then as far as the Nerd Camp, it's all, any educators, K-12, librarians, administrators. We have some city librarians that are coming in. So we really wanted, and it's all subject areas too. So we didn't want to just make it English. We wanted to make sure if anybody had anything they wanted to talk about literacy-wise about any subject, they could come and be a part of that.
Okay, and one other question. You mentioned you were working with Susan Swinburne from TEF, so that means that students that are taking the summer schools will still be able to participate? Since there is a little bit of overlap in dates,
There's like that
et cetera?
1 day overlap.
Yeah.
We're working something out.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Thanks.
It's a great question.
Quick question.
Thank you for your
Quick question.
time.
Can I ask a question right here?
Yeah.
Is it possible for more authors to be part of this? Children authors, or is it, do you have a cutoff? I'm just kind of curious.
Sure. So we actually still have authors writing us. So we have a wait list, which makes us feel really hoity-toity. So we do have a wait list, and really what we're waiting for is to see what kind of, how many people sign up to see how many authors we can actually accept to be a part of it. Obviously, the more authors we have, the more kids we're able to have for Nerdling, as our authors are running a lot of those sessions for our students. So the more we have, the better it would be for our community. But we're really waiting to see what our registration looks like. That's a great question.
And the boxes have been out at the schools for a little bit of time, so they're starting to come in, and we're starting to hear more and more talk about it around campuses when we're around. So word's getting out, so we'll have a better idea pretty soon.
Good. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
We're excited.
we're excited too. Thank you.
Okay, we are on to item number 9.1, public hearing and board's initial response to the Torrance Teachers Association initial proposal for 2018-2019. The Torrance Teachers Association initial proposal for 2018-2019 was submitted at the regular meeting of the Board of Education held on January 22nd, 2019. Copies of the proposal have been available in the city libraries and the Human Resources Department for review by the public. A public hearing will be held at the Torrance Teachers Association initial proposal for 2018-2019 at this time. Is there any public comment related to the Torrance Teachers Association initial proposal for 2018-2019? Yes, come on.
Well, yes, there is.
Come on.
Deb to Bush.
Awesome. Thank you. There's a keyboard up here. That's right. Good evening, President Lee, school board members, cabinet, and student representatives. Deborah Tabush, TTA President, 1619 Cravens Avenue. I'd like to let you know that some teachers have reached out and we're very appreciative of the district's effort to collect data on TUSD's technology survey regarding the update procedures. Thank you for taking into consideration the view of those who use the technology in the classroom setting in a timely manner. It is greatly appreciated.
Thank you. The Board of Education looks forward to the continuation of cooperative, good faith contract negotiations with the Torrance Teachers Association. The board's initial response is to refer the Torrance Teachers Association initial proposal for the 2018-2019 to the board's representatives for negotiations. Good. Item 9.2, public hearing and board's initial response to the Torrance Unified School District initial proposal to the Torrance Teachers Association for 2018-19. The Torrance Unified School District initial proposal to the Torrance Teachers Association for the 2018-19 was submitted the regular meeting of the Board of Education held on March 4th, 2019. Copies of the proposal have been available to the city libraries and the Human Resources Department for review by the public. A public hearing will be held on the Torrance Unified School District initial proposal to the Torrance Teachers Association for the 2018-2019 at this time. Is there any public comment related to the Torrance Unified School District's initial proposal to the Torrance Teachers Association for 2018-19? Good. The Board of Education looks forward to the continuation of cooperative, good faith contract negotiations for the Torrance Teachers Association. The board's initial response is to refer the Torrance Unified School District initial proposal to the Torrance Teachers Association for the 2018-19 to the board's representatives for negotiations. Thank you. On to oral communications. We've got some cards. So, you know, when I was first a school board member, I could read that without any problem at all. Now it's getting a little tougher. Yeah, I know. It's just, okay, we'll get it working. The Board of Education welcomes input from the public in order to discuss district business in an orderly manner for the privacy and safety of the speakers and to help staff respond more directly. The board requires that public presentations to the board comply with certain procedures, including speakers to non-agenda items may address only items that are within the subject matter or jurisdiction of the board. Time allotted for such presentations is limited to 3 minutes. Mrs. Reagans will keep that time. Total time allotted for public input on non-agenda items is limited to 30 minutes. A speaker may not relinquish his or her time to another. When addressing the board, speakers are required to state their name, address address the president from the podium, and adhere to applicable time limits. Complaints against employees or students will normally be heard in closed session, and the district's complaint procedure should be followed before discussions with the board. The board may remove disruptive individuals, which we won't have, and order the room cleared, which we've never done. Any person who willfully disturbs the public school meeting is guilty of a misdemeanor. So first up is Lanisha Davis. I butchered her first name.
If you can help us.
but she will correct me.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lenicia Davis.
I was close.
It's okay. I am with Behavioral Health Services, and we are having our annual Drugs Kill Dreams Youth Summit. It is March 30th. It's open to youth ages 11 to 17. We encourage all of Torrance youth to come out. It will be at Torrance Memorial. It's at the Hoffman Center, and it will be from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. There's all types of workshops. There's healthy lifestyle workshops. We're going to be educating the youth on alcohol and other drugs. And there will also be sculpting. There will be healthy cooking. This event is for everyone, as I said, in Torrance. And you can volunteer. If you want to know more information, I will have the flyers on me here. So please do. If you have any questions, let me know. But thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next up is Sandra Vieira. And after that will be Lenore Landis.
Good evening, President Lee, board members, and cabinet. This is actually a repeat of my statement from last August, but I wanted the new board members to have the same information. My name is Sandra Vieira. I'm a mother and a teacher on special assignment. My most basic charge as a mother and a teacher is to keep children safe. So that's why I'm here today. I taught at Edison Elementary, so whenever I think of a modified hydrofluoric acid release, which other members will talk about today, I think of my tenure there. Every day, hundreds of children play outside during lunch, and imagine an MHF release during that time. My room was right next to the playground and designated as a room that the children would go to in case of emergency. Now, the thought of getting all those children into my classroom before a cloud of MHF strikes is daunting enough. But even if it were possible, it is only the first step. I have to prevent the gas from entering the classroom. So the plan calls for duct tape all around the door, the windows, and the vents. Now, we have tall ceilings and no ladders, but we have tables. So I imagine that if I put a chair on top of a table and stand on the chair, I may be able to reach the vents. Now, you have to remember, I'd have about 200 children in one room, so it may take me a while to get to the bin that has a duct tape in it, take it out, clear the children enough to move a table where I need it, get on it, and tape the vents off. Then I would repeat the process all over again for the next vent and all the windows. Last, I would tackle the door. I know I should put a wet towel under the door, so I would go back to the bin, find the water in the towel, wet the towel, and stuff it under the door. Last, I would get a chair to tape all around it. All of this with dozens of children crying or clamoring for my attention. Now, Edison is just a few blocks from the Torrance refinery. This means that the MHF gas cloud could reach Edison in from 4 to 7 minutes, depending on the wind speed. 4 to 7 minutes to get the children off the playground and complete all these tasks. North High would probably have a minute or two less, Yukon and Magruder a minute or two more. Now, after Sandy Hook, we had a police training here where all the first responders and police did trained all the teachers, and I will never forget that they said that the teachers who were able to save the children chose to put the children's safety first. And that is a duty that I take seriously, and that is why I am here today. In order to protect the children, I have to do everything that I can to replace MHF, but I don't have that power. So as a school board, you have the power to lend a voice of Torrance Unified that has more than 23,000 students in the reach of an MHF cloud to ask the South Coast AQMD to replace MHF with a safer alternative within 4 years. I ask that you write such a letter. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Lenore Landis.
Good evening. My name is Lenore Landis. I'm the mother of 2 TUSD students, and I'm the chemistry department chair at Cypress College. As a mother and educator, I feel completely frustrated and dismayed that our children cannot be protected from an MHF release. MHF is an extremely hazardous chemical. It is absorbed easily and deeply into body tissue. Even at low concentrations, MHF can cause irreversible injury to internal organs or death. All exposures require immediate and specialized medical treatment. At the last AQMD meeting, several experts were invited to speak. Dr. Kenneth Hudnett from the USGS explained that a magnitude 7 earthquake on the San Andreas Fault could cause the pipelines to separate, and sloshing in the tanks could cause tank failure, which could cause a catastrophic release. So what is the TUSD plan when there's an earthquake, then an MHF release? Well, I was told by Mr. John Pearson, Director of Student Services, that the district has an all-hazards approach. And the plan is there's an earthquake, then release to evacuate the buildings and go out on the field. The all-hazards approach doesn't have a plan for the gas that's soon to come. Another expert, Dr. Ron Koopman, who led an industry test release of 8,300 pounds of HF. They measured the concentration to be 18 times the lethal level at the distance of North High, 2 times the lethal level 1.9 miles away, still lethal at 4 miles away. And I can't even fathom how 250,000 pounds of this highly toxic chemical is used just blocks away from our schools. Even if the MHF cloud weren't caused by an earthquake, teachers cannot adequately shelter in place. They don't have the time nor the proper equipment to make their classrooms airtight. You have heard this same message from other parents and teachers before. Our children cannot be protected from an MHF release while they're at school. This is an unnecessary risk when there are safe and affordable alternatives. And I'm aware of the complex political and bureaucratic issues involved. So I ask you to take a step back for a moment and remember that it's your moral imperative to act upon your conscience, to do what's right, to honor the trust that people placed in you. Please take a stand to protect the lives of 23,000 students. On behalf of all the concerned parents and teachers, I ask you to write a letter to the AQMD requesting that MHF is replaced with a safe alternative within 4 years. Several of us came tonight to support our request. If you could please stand. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Sally Hayati.
So I have to have visible something to show you. Maybe if you stand here and then you can hold it up high. Good evening. My name is Sally Hayati. I live in Torrance. I'm the grandmother of one current and one future TUSD student. I have bachelor's and master's of science and a PhD in engineering. I'm a member of the AQMD proposed Rule 1410 working group. I'm here to ask you to send a letter within 4 weeks to the AQMD board supporting a rule mandating replacement of modified hydrofluoric acid, or MHF, at the refinery with a safe alternative within 4 years. The school board responds so appropriately to so many safety issues, including active shooters and coyotes, but MHF is in its own category. A single accident could permanently disable or kill thousands of children. In 2018, Superior, Wisconsin evacuated 70 square miles because a refinery inferno threatened to release HF from a tank. All refinery mitigation systems were fully operational, but still they had to evacuate 40,000 people, including 30 schools. The same size zone here would involve evacuating 578,000 people and 250 schools. That's why evacuation isn't an option. Shelter in place is our only hope here, but sheltering could be a death sentence in Torrance. This is the refinery's official EPA MHF hazard zone. Their admission inside this zone, 3.2 miles, exposure to an MHF plume could cause serious and irreversible injuries or even death in the inner part of the zone, that's inside the red area, where the HF concentration is highest. So that means Torrance. HF aerosol particles are smaller than viruses. That's why HF can enter and build up in shelter rooms, even if they're relatively airtight. Measures to reduce air and HF infiltration into schools could cost even more than the $15 million allocated to security measures. As Wisconsin understood, even fully operational mitigation systems can't guarantee public safety during a large release. In California, it's worse yet. A quake can release MHF, destroy mitigation systems, and make sheltering impossible. Torrance has already experienced the refinery 3 near misses in 1987, 94, and 2015 that were nearly catastrophic. Accidental MHF releases occur every year. 3 viable and affordable alternatives are available. Jobs will be created, not lost. The refinery will not shut down. AQMD staff experts strongly recommend MHF replacement. However, the AQMD board is caving in to intense industry pressure. Public officials must speak up now for an MHF ban before we lose this opportunity. It's the only cost-effective and acceptable solution. And I just have
Thank you.
some things I'd like to give. Who should
They
I
can
hand
pass
this
them
to?
out.
There's enough for every board member and also one extra one. Please try to take a look at them, mostly pictures.
Thank you. Okay, we're off to discussion action items. You won't hurt our feelings if your item has been completed and you leave at this point. I always like to make that offer, or we're pretty exciting sometimes, so you can stay. But, first item would be item 11.2, approval to place Torrance Refining Company dedication plaque outside of the Yukon Elementary School Science Lab. Dr. Stowe. Oh, I need a motion in a second.
You have a motion.
Second.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, members of the board. As you know, the Torrance Education Foundation for the last few years has been soliciting donations to supply our new science labs. The science labs were built utilizing bond funds, and unfortunately, those funds can only be used for capital expense, not the supplies that go in the classroom. And so the Torrance Education Foundation stepped up and has raised a significant amount of money. One of those donations has been for the entire supply in that lab, which is in the $45,000 range. 41. And that's the Torrance Refining Company at Yukon Elementary. The board policy before putting up any naming of facilities or putting up a plaque of business partners would require board action. So it is tonight with that request from the Ed Foundation that comes before you tonight.
Good. We got a motion, we got a second. I see no lights. Mrs. Reyes.
Sorry, I got my light on really slowly. So I was looking at the plaque example, I guess, that you gave us. So it will be in color?
Yes, it will be in color, and actually, Susan on Friday sent me a little bit different version of it.
Oh.
Basically, just adds Yukon Elementary and Torrance Unified School District, but essentially all the logos and things are the same.
Okay, and essentially, we're naming that science lab for the Torrance Refining Company that actually donated the monies to do the equipment and materials inside. Is that correct?
We're putting up a plaque on the outside. I don't know that they'll refer to it as.
Well, it says Torrance Refining Company Science Laboratory.
That was the first design to be discussed.
Oh.
Can you talk into the microphone?
Come on up.
Nobody can hear you at home.
Okay, so this is an old design that I have here?
It's going through iterations.
Okay.
It is not necessarily going to be called the Yukon Science Lab. It will be it will be called the Yukon Science Lab, supported by Torrance Refining Company and the Ed Foundation and Robinson Helicopter, which was our lead donor on the whole campaign. All those things will be subordinate to the name of the lab
Okay,
itself.
so that does actually sound quite different than what I'm looking at here.
Yeah,
But still in color, Susan.
Yes, the design is intended to be on tempered glass with the visuals embedded in the glass. It's, what's the word for it being, weatherproof?
Weatherproof, it
hardy.
will withstand weather
That's-
with all of
yes.
that? Okay, I've not seen one like that, so we'll see what it looks like. Cool.
Just a quick question again, before the plaque is done, will we have the opportunity? before the plaque is done, are we going to be able to look at the plaque for final approval? Or, because that's a big difference. It's not the name of the refinery that's on there. It's actually, you put the science laboratory as a part of that. And to me, that could get a little confusing, just to verify.
So if the board gives me direction tonight to around specific wording, I can work with Susan on that to make sure that the final product does look as the board desires. If you want to push this off to a future meeting and specifically approve that, then we can do that as well. But if there's some agreement that you can tell me, include this, not that, I can work with you and work with the Ed Foundation to make sure that happens.
I just want to suggest that if we can have, well, obviously we have two other logos on there, and they're just the name of the organization, like Robinson Helicopter and Torrance Ed Foundation. If we could just have Torrance Refining Company, it's fine with me, but to have it Science Laboratory, it just seems a little bit, unless we're naming that, I want that clarity, because if we're going to call it that, then we have to have a discussion here about that, because we're calling this whole lab the Torrance Refinery Laboratory, Science Laboratory. That can have implications, and that's why I want to make sure. We just heard the whole, right for you guys, the whole discussion from these folks about MHF, and so I want to make sure that we're clear on this. So if we're going to have a plaque just having the organizations, that's great. If we're going to call it the Science Laboratory, I think that's a whole different discussion.
So that I think that's certainly acceptable to not name it, but provide a plaque there with the logos of those respective companies, UConn Science Lab, and then, you know.
Shall I amend my motion?
Yeah.
All right, I move that we approve the UConn Science Lab plaque. Well, I was going to say this. How did you word it? With
that we only have the names of the company without
Susan,
naming the
could-
science
Not,
lab.
yeah,
for
the-
it.
Susan
we're not
come back?
naming the building.
Susan, could you please repeat what you said? The UConn Science Lab
So-
supported by?
The revision that I failed to circulate to you because it was on Friday, is UConn Science Lab, supported by the refining company, the Ed Foundation, and Robinson Helicopter. And then there's a subline that says these donors are being recognized for having provided the contents of the equipment for the
Let's
lab.
do this. You make that motion that we don't name it the science lab, that we only show the sponsors, but before it goes up, this board wants to see the actual prototype before it goes to print, for us to see it, and if anybody individually has an issue with it, then they can contact the Ed Foundation.
Well, when the building was specifically built for the purpose of science, it is a science lab because that's what our bond built. Are we saying that in the future we may repurpose the building?
No, I mean, I'm trying to come up with a motion that, because I think given that we're going to change it, and I think everybody here is in agreement that we want to see it before it goes up.
Okay.
So I'm just saying that I'm trying to come up with a motion that.
Well, that's what I was going to say, that I was going to move that we approve the plaque for the UConn Science Lab with funding provided by the listed companies.
Correct. That's dead solid, perfect.
Well, it sounds like there's a more final design already
And I can share that with you
created
when
that we
get-
haven't seen.
Right. And then as an addendum to that motion, that
Which we
before
will
it goes
see.
up, the board sees exactly what that plaque's going to look like.
I think that's
I
reasonable.
can provide that.
When do you expect the plaque to be ready and to be put up?
I believe on April 4th,
Yes.
they have scheduled a ceremony.
Yeah.
When's our next board meeting?
For that, our next board meeting is not until
Well,
April 22nd.
we have a quarterly construction on March 25th, though, right?
Yeah.
Next Monday we do, yes.
Could we do it, just have it available then to look at it? Because, yeah, because you'd have to, or at least the design, because you certainly have to have it finalized by then to get it ready for.
Did you get my motion? Is it okay?
Yeah, she's good at making
Thank you.
sense of these things.
It does sound better.
Okay, good. We got a motion, we got a second. Everybody's good with it? All those in favor?
Aye.
Good. Thank you very much. Good. Item 11.3, adopt a resolution AS-10-1819, resolution of the governing board authorizing the borrowing of funds for fiscal year 2019-20 and the issuance of and sale of one or more series 2019-2020 tax and revenue anticipation notes, trans, therefore, and participation in the California School Cash Reserve Program, and requesting the Board of Supervisors of the county to issue and sell said series notes. I need a motion and a second. I'll take it over to Dr. Stout.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, members of the board. This is an annual item that we bring to the board. Just for your knowledge, the last time the district issued a trans was in the 2010-11 school year in the amount of $1.8 million. And this is more of a hedge against some catastrophic event where we don't have enough cash to pay our bills. Should this occur, we would then have to do a cash analysis, submit that to the county, and they would say, yes, we don't have enough to pay our bills, and then allow us to do this. It's not something we anticipate, but we do it at this point in time just in case. The months of November and December for some school districts is rather tight when it comes to cash flow because that's prior to receiving the first property tax payment. But again, you know, we don't anticipate this. This is more of a routine item that we bring to the board each year.
Okay. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good. Thank you very much. Item number 11.4, approve an agreement with Clifford Moss Llc to develop a strategic communication plan. I need a motion and a second.
Motion approved.
Second.
Good. Dr. Stowe.
Thank you. So at the board meeting on January 22nd, Mr. Lee discussed the need for a strategic communication plan as a way to present what we do as a district to the community at large, both internally and externally. Following this meeting, I researched some firms who do this work and met with one of them, Bonnie Moss from Clifford Moss Llc Based out of Oakland. This firm's worked with many school districts throughout the state, including a district relatively our size, Orange Unified, just last year. And I spoke with that superintendent, and she gave them rave reviews about the work that they did within that community. In this item, we are proposing that the board enter an agreement with Clifford Moss for 15 months at the cost of $6,500 per month for a scope of work that would culminate in the development and implementation of a strategic communications plan. This would be TUSD's plan, built in-house with strategic guidance and facilitation, utilizing the input from all stakeholder groups in the community. In working with this third party, they would bring their years of experience around the state, as well as fresh eyes to our situation, to provide valuable insight in how to engage the community to build a collaborative plan. Our blueprint to communicate the important work we do, educating students to their highest level each and every day with the larger community. We propose to start our journey with Clifford Moss in April so that they can begin the work of listening to our community groups before the summer break. Clifford Moss will then facilitate convening a steering committee, a key communicators network, represented by these various groups to share what they learn as a framework for moving forward on our strategic communication plan. Two-way listening and communication channels will support active engagement, listening, and feedback with all stakeholders throughout the process. There will be school board participation at every step along the way, from initial involvement with interviews in the assessment period to a representative on the steering committee, the key communicators network, as well as a board presentation of the strategic plan when it's developed. The plan implementation goals in working with Bonnie and Laura from Clifford Moss would include fostering a culture of communicators. They believe that this needs to be our plan, we need to build it in-house, and we need to be part of the implementation of it, and with that comes training and tools and engagement. Because we all want to, maintain TUSD's tremendous reputation in the community and build on what the community sees us as and help them understand more of what we do. This proposal also includes authorization to conduct some public opinion polling if necessary, using the same firm that TUSD used in polling for our bond measures. We are excited about the opportunity to hear candid, honest feedback from all members of our broad school community and finding new ways to engage the public in sharing the story of the Torrance Unified School District. So I would like to now at this point take any questions that the board has regarding moving forward on this proposal.
Mr. Gerson.
More of a comment than a question, because this was important to me for a different reason. I know a lot of people have talked about improving our communication to the community, both within those that have students and those without. Thank you for sending the packet. I really liked the presentation that Clifford Moss put out. The thing that hit me the most was one of their three big points, which is listening is a lost art. I am interested in that part where we are taking the feedback and the communication from the community. As you know, that was important to me before I got here, in making sure that, as you said, two-way communication. And I think we'll hear some things that we already know and some ahas. And so I'm hoping that that will be an important part of our process.
Mrs. Reagans.
Yeah, actually, I talked with you kind of at length today about this, that in looking at this particular item about communicating better, we don't really communicate very much in this item about what it is and how we're justifying the expenditures. And I think it actually would be helpful for the community to have a better feel for that. Actually, Mr. Gerson mentioned the packet. We actually have seen significant information from this, and I guess there's more that's been forthcoming since then. So if there's information we can prepare so that there is a public sort of identification of what the intent is and what the plan will sort of go through so that they can understand what the expenditure is and why it's worthwhile. I would appreciate that.
Absolutely, and we intend to, on our website, to be able to talk about when they come and interview people, once we get a feel for what the direction is and what that plan is, to make sure that's communicated with all stakeholder groups and put it on the website, and we'll have a location for it. But yes, I will work with them, should the board approve this item, to put together some kind of a timeline and certain goals and actions that maybe can be anticipated. But again, the metrics and the assessment tools and how we measure our success in that plan it's ours, and it's not static, which is why it's not a, go do this and you'll be successful. They will work with us over the course of 15 months to develop, implement, assess, and make sure that we are meeting the community's needs.
But even just more a definition of what a district strategic communications plan might be, since that's all it says in the item. That's a very vague term.
Sure, absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah, lastly, since I brought it up, but actually I brought it up because we have board members that brought it up to me. So, and certainly in the community, I did, by coincidence, the former editor of the Daily Breeze was in my office, Jean Adelsman, if she actually watches this, on a completely different item, but we got to reminiscing when this community could look to a local newspaper as the common deliverer of news and messages and what's going on in the community. And this community now in 2019 communicates very differently. There's, I think, 3 people on my block that get the Daily Breeze. And they get their news from social media, they get it, at the Little League field, the soccer fields, they're getting it at a lot of different places. And to some extent, we need to get away from, we're going to put it on our website. Well, okay, who knows where our website is and where to find it once they get to the website. So I think a lot of the things that we do, we're going to, as we go through this process, which kind of excites me, is we're going to look how the community wants to communicate and how they want to communicate with us, and then we'll be able to facilitate that. We can't be so arrogant it's on the website, or we put it in the paper. Well, you're only hitting 15% of the community maybe. And certainly the other 85% have a vested interest in what we do because we're just talking about bonds. Everybody that owns a piece of property in this town is paying for those bonds. And certainly everybody in this community, house values are determined by how well the district does. And what's even more interesting is, I know Mr. Gerson is our official representative to the Torrance Strategic Plan, and I sat through one of the sub-meetings, and even in a room full of real estate developers, they brought up how good the schools are. Well, it really isn't in their wheelhouse, but they brought that up ahead of police and fire and a lot of other things. So to some extent, this is a branding exercise. What are we as a brand to be able to communicate that? And then conversely, how to interact with the community better than what we have, because I think the world, and we're not alone, but the world kind of passed us by and how they communicate, and this is going to give us a vehicle and an opportunity to communicate with everyone. And this involves principals, this involves vice principals, this will involve administration staff, this will involve M&O staff, this will involve everybody in this organization and their ability to communicate with everybody they come in contact with. So I'm pretty excited about what this is going to end up looking like, and a 15-month timeline is tight, but I think doable. So I'm excited about this. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, good, thank you. 11.5 is board action for general obligation bond issue measure-wise surplus funds. Dr. Mann, and I need a motion in a second, but we don't have anything to motion in a second on. This is always a hard one.
No, you need a motion in a second. You're going to approve.
Okay, so.
Can we ask questions prior then?
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
we'll
absolutely
modify it. It's just an odd thing of how we run our meetings. So, you want to make a motion?
Sure, move to approve.
Second. Okay, Dr. Mann.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. We're in a unique position tonight from the standpoint of Measure Y and actually completing the scope of work of Measure Y and having a surplus of funds in Measure Y. Dr. Stowe's going to go through some history with you in a few moments of how and what Measure Y and Z was. But also, the reason we're in this position is because of the levels of cooperation that has gone on in the district between our bond oversight committee members, our architect firms, Balfour, Beatty, both in program and construction management, our school site committees, and by the way, those school site committees were made up of the principal, of teachers, of classified, and also parents who took their jobs very seriously, who took a conservative approach as we moved through the work that needed to be done at their school site, and also our board. As we have moved through, and there have been changes on our boards over the past 10 years, but we've always worked cooperatively with one goal, which was to complete the measure. And that is exactly what we have done tonight. So with that, Dr. Stowe's just going to do a brief history, and then I'm going to go through the list with you and how something got on the list.
Thank you, Dr. Mannon. Before I begin providing some information, I'd like to identify a few people here in the crowd that have been part of that cooperation and continue to work here to make sure that we provide the maximum that we can using these voter-approved dollars for our children. And so I'd like to recognize Ian Kempton, our Director of Maintenance Operations, who's here.
There he is.
As well as 4 representatives from Balfour Beatty, Tom Schlegel and Angie Garcia from Program Management, and Don Rondo and Wolf Calderon from Construction Management. Thank you for being here. So the facility planning process began back in 2006. Not sure how many of you remember the Facility and Asset Review Committee, and that was a committee, a board-appointed committee that met to review every TUSD asset. I served, and actually Mr. Egan as well, served on that committee as parent during that time. And we had many early mornings with Dr. Stabler at various schools to be able to, and Dr. Harpole taking pictures. So we met, again, we visited every facility. There was an AM and a PM group, and it was quite striking what we saw. Those of us that even had worked in the district for a while at the time, just seeing some of the conditions were pretty bad. And so as a result of those meetings, a comprehensive report was presented to the board, and I had it put on the website. So if you'd like to go back and read it, it's about 100 pages under my division under bond. But it really documents every school and so what the existing conditions were. The committee also looked at possible assets and additional facility needs that may have been needed at that time. So that led to November of 2008, and thanks to the board and Dr. Mannon and a number of individuals who spent countless hours campaigning, you can see that the pass rate of over 70% for both of these bond measures really demonstrated the desire by the community to rebuild and renovate our schools. Measure Y consisted of $265 million to finish Measure R projects, as well as to renovate all of the schools to the level that we expected them to. And Measure Z was a special facility project bond that ran concurrently, and that was $90 million. So some of the Measure Y projects that were done, it modernized all of our K-12 campuses between 2009 and 2019. West High is just finishing up, and we're waiting for certification, close with certification on that one soon. And it repaired windows and door systems, rain gutters, roofs, concrete, a brand new whole middle school, 2 new buildings over at Fern, flooring and heating and ventilation systems and restrooms, all within Measure Y. Measure Z provided a new art and music room for each elementary school, new science labs at the middle school, upgraded high school stadiums and gymnasium buildings, and helped repair covered walkways that, if you look back at those pictures, there's a lot of blue sky you can see through those covered walkways. And so those clearly helped get us to the level that we want to be today. I mentioned the Bond Oversight Committee earlier. That was part of the regulation for passing these bonds. And so we've had a number of people serve on that committee, and we thank them for the work that they've done. In addition to Y and Z, we utilized other mechanisms to help support what was being done at the schools. And Prop 39 was passed, which is the California Clean Energy Jobs Act, and that allowed $5 million, $5.2 million to come to Torrance Unified to support the work that we were that we were already doing with regard to energy efficiency within the schools. And so we utilized funding from this proposition in order to to stretch the bond dollars, quite honestly, and put in LED fixtures and other kinds of lighting that were covered under Prop 39. Other efficiencies and savings in how we utilized things was the structure of the modernizations. And so the elementary schools, many elementary schools, the first ones had a lot of temporary buildings, and those are costly. And not only are you paying to rent those relocatable buildings, the interim housing, you're paying additional costs for inspectors because they become 12-month projects or 14-month projects. And so all the additional costs that go along with a longer construction project, we consolidated those into summer mod projects where it became 3 or 4 months of work. We know from this past summer that all of it wasn't done, but we were able to phase certain aspects of campuses so that at least students had classrooms, schools were operable and able to open, and it was quite a bit of hardship, I'll say, on the teachers and the principals at those schools, and really thank them for going along and packing up their rooms the day school ended and not getting in their rooms till the day before school started. It was quite a logistical operation, but it saved a lot of money and allowed us to be in the position we are tonight. In addition to those, the condensation of those projects, for West High and Torrance High, we took portable buildings that the district owned as we replaced science labs and art music rooms and renovated other classrooms at schools. We were able to take district-owned portables, put them on the blacktop at Torrance High or on the blacktop at West High, and not have to pay that rental cost. So at those schools, for example, West High, that we're just finishing, that's 24 months of interim housing that we didn't have to pay another company for to rent buildings. We owned them, and so that was another way that we saved some money. So now I'll turn it over to Dr. Mannon, who will go through what we believe at this point in time. Again, it's not, we haven't closed the books, but we're looking at roughly $6.5 million in surplus funds, and so Dr. Mannon will go through the project list.
Thank you, Dr. Stowe. The way that we got to where we are with a project list is that the board requested, when we were actually doing Magruder, and I'll talk a little bit about that, it's later on in the slide, that as I went along, would I create a list? And this was a list of potential projects, many because the budget just would not allow them at a school site. So we would place them on a list for future discussion in case we did have a surplus. Now, quite frankly, when we did Magruder, the very first one to start the list, I said there wasn't going to be a surplus. So that was at that time, almost 10 years ago, we did not envision that. But we kept the list and continued to move with that. A few comment, and then I'll get into the real meat about process. What we're actually asking you to do is to approve, which gives us direction. This won't be the last time you will see this, because what we would need to do is then go out and bid these projects that are on the list. So, there's no reason for us to spend time if we want to go out and bid a project, but the board really didn't want that kind of a project. So that's just a waste of our time, board's time, and everybody's time. So this isn't the last time you'll see most of these projects, depending on what your action is. All right, Torrance Elementary School. We have about 50% of the windows were completed under Measure R, which leads into the fact that, in my opinion, we need to go ahead and fix the system for the other 50% or so of windows there.
You mean Measure Y, not Measure R?
Yes, well.
Oh, wait a minute, that
No,
does go back to.
It does go back to R,
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah. So what we have taken many steps in the district to standardize things. In other words, we standardize paint. We standardize windows. I know Mrs. Liu knows this, and Mr. Lee and Mrs. Reagan and Mr. Gerson probably firsthand. One of the things that you would have seen in the district was that where there was a window, it was replaced with a piece of wood, for example, plywood cut. Our guys would put that in place of a piece of glass. So by standardizing where we are and the type of window system that we have, that will allow M&O then to go out and a broken window, okay, they have it in stock, they put it in. Therefore, there are no situations that we run into where, excuse me, we'll have a problem with that. So this would be the other 50%. The other area is a concrete structure, we call it canopy, but it is similar to what Torrance High has. And when you walk along Torrance High and you have those large, this is a large, straight outside of the multipurpose room at Torrance L. Now, we put this on now because the good news is we thought it was structurally unsound from where we looked at it initially this summer. Structural engineer reviewed it. It isn't structurally hindered in any way, but we are going to have to go back in and put some concrete in on the sides of it where some has fallen off. So it's a fix for that particular area. Victor Elementary School, again, we're in that 50 to 55% of windows that were complete, except at Victor, we have, the windows are operable. However, and I don't have an answer for this at all, there can be as many as 2 to 3 different window systems in an individual classroom there, which creates all kinds of standardization problems for us, which is a similar situation to Torrance L, except there's more variability at Victor than there was at Torrance L. And we really haven't seen that before, as Victor is in any of our other in any of our other schools as we were modernizing them. So I really don't have an answer for it other than we need to fix it and move on. Victor, as you know, is our largest elementary school. The plan that we were looking at, we have to provide what's called pathway lighting. That's why we have lights in parking lots. Well, the concept at Victor was that we were going to hang lights on buildings so the light comes straight out in the parking lot to provide pathway lighting. I don't think that works, quite frankly, so we didn't do it. We are, looking at, since this is a large parking lot, just treat it like our middle schools or high schools, with the light poles, shrouds, light comes straight down. If we do the lights hanging off buildings, you're going to shoot it so that some of the neighbors are potentially could have a problem because the light comes out through there, where if we just fix it the way we would normally fix a high school or middle school, I don't think we have any problem with it.
Is that both parking lots at Victor, Dr. Mannon?
This is the front parking lot.
Only the front,
That
okay.
large parking lot. You will see, and South High School is the one that came up first, concrete site work is simply trip hazards. On all of our high school campuses, and we've fixed some of it, but we didn't fix all of it, and that's where you'll see that concrete is at different levels because you've had heaving that's gone on. So there's not just one particular spot and we have to fix it. We've had heaving all over. And especially, and I'll skip down to North High School. North High School is a problem, and we have talked about North High School before because of alluvial soil. And so we get more issues there with concrete and pulling away and the breaking of concrete than we do in other areas of the town because of the alluvial soil. Just going back up is Magruder's rock box. What that is an actual engineering term. When we had completed Magruder and we were having a discussion, the board and I like this on a meeting night, the problem is in our city, there are many parts of our city who, one, don't have storm drains, or two, inadequate storm drains. So that as we've worked through, we've tried to solve the problems as best we could, but we could discharge water and there's no place for the water to go. So when we're talking about the rock box at Magruder, and these do work, they're large, if you want a four-cornered, they've got some rocks in there, and the water, then we put in pipes to it, and the water percolates down through. So we control it rather than trying to discharge it into a neighbor's yard or, other places around the streets where it'll run right back on top of us. But we have known that for some time. So where those are located is, should we approve this, it's out in the middle of Magruder's field. And so they'll come in and they'll dig it out, and the box goes in. They'll start putting in additional drains, new pipes, and hooking all that up to mitigate the flooding that goes on at Magruder with that. And we have seen that for some years. And that's because of inadequate storm drains in that area. Arnold.
Mr. Hahn, now.
Yeah.
Does it affect the field at all? Does it affect the field by having that rock box in the middle of the field?
No. And I'll give you an example, too. Hickory has one. We put it in at Hickory because at the time, the budget for Hickory allowed us to do it, and you really can't tell where it is. I could tell you where it is because I could walk with you and tell you where it is, but if you didn't know, you wouldn't know. It's just so far underground. Arnold Elementary, another unusual one, in that they have steel walkways. And what has happened there is water has gotten under the roof, between the roof and the steel, and rusted it out. We don't think there is a fix for it, quite frankly. This is going to really have to be a rebuild job on one particular section of canopy. Arnold has a problem also with drainage. Their problem is, their problem is over where their sandboxes are on their playground. They fill with water. Our M&O guys have tried to work on that. We don't think there's a fix that we can do. This one will require a civil engineer to come in and actually design how to deal with this water. It's more than just a little pooling that goes on there. That whole area does flood. So if we have an opportunity to fix it, we ought to fix it. And that's what our recommendation will be. But how that's fixed will come back with an engineering report as to how to fix it.
But Arnold repair cover walkway, better to say rebuild cover walkway, you're saying?
Well, it's repair and rebuild depending on when we tear it into it, how far it goes.
But the cost won't change.
Right now, that's our estimate. Cost won't change.
To rebuild it.
Yeah. Anza Elementary. If you recall, because of the volume of water that has come down, and according to the LA Times, which I think is correct, that we had more water in the month of February than for 30 years.
Yes.
And so Anza had 2 rooms where they actually flooded. Now, they were kind of flabbergasted with that because those rooms, the last time they had any water near those rooms was 10 years ago. And before that, it was a long time before. So, based on, what we have seen, we believe that it was because of the volume of water that came down in such a small time frame. So, could in fact that happen again this week? Could. Could it last 10 years out? Could. I mean, we just don't know. So, I think the prudent thing to do is, and this is another one where we don't have the actual fix before you, but we have an estimated cost of having a civil engineer come in, have the civil engineer go through this and try to determine where and how to deal with that water condition there.
So might that include, I know having visited there, that the drainage of the grass portions in between the buildings?
That will
all
be.
drains into the classrooms?
Well, you see, that'll be looked at.
Okay,
Because that's a part of the problem.
that's what I figured.
Yeah. If Anza is nice and flat. So, anytime you get grass that grows through the years, then it isn't flat anymore.
built up on the other side of the building, so it just goes
then we
right
got the
into the
water
classrooms.
issues with it. But we have to look at that whole area there. And quite frankly, as I've told some of you, it takes a civil engineer to do that. Yeah. Also at Anza, we pulled up some carpet. We thought we could go in and clean and polish tile in a high-traffic area, which is the school office. It didn't work. The tile just needs to be replaced, period. No matter how many times our guys will go over there, they really can't get it back to a level that we'd all think was acceptable, especially in a high-traffic area, which is the school office with that. Hickory, we talked about, does have a rock box, but they still have, and we solved the biggest part of the problem at Hickory, which was they called it the lake, and it was over by the kindergarten building. Actually, I was there sometimes when it flooded, and truthfully, the teachers there, and they laugh about this now, but it is true. They did wear galoshes to have to go through the water. I mean, that's true. We fixed that part, but we still have another area that floods on the playground over there. So we need to have, again, civil engineer look at this, which may entail doing another drain and more pipe into their rock box, because they already have the rock box. Yeah.
Was the rock box originally for that lake, or not?
Yeah, the rock box was originally for the lake, which we've solved. But this is in addition, that is another area now. And since they have the rock box, it makes sense to me that we just go ahead and do what we need to do to take care of the situation for them. Also, part of the playground, when they were modernized, was slurried. There's another part of the playground that was not. We think we just ought to go ahead and slurry it and get new striping on it. I walked it with Edna. I agree with her. If we try to do the striping without the slurry, it's just going to be, granules of stuff and then blow part away and the whole thing. So it really needs it. Same thing is true at Adams. I walked that area with our principal. Same thing, it needs to be slurried. And her request was new striping, which it needs. But if we slurry, then we can just get new striping on it and take care of it. Jefferson Middle School, many of you who know, lives straight across from Mr. Lee. But Jefferson has the smallest parking lot of all of our middle schools. It's in the front of the school. As we went through the modernization, One of the things that we allowed schools to do was to do what's called alternate ads, so that if for some reason the budget came into lower, and remember, one day you could bid a project, it'd be one thing, and the next day it could be something else in terms of numbers, then we would take their alternate ad, and they would then be able to fund it. Jefferson's alternate ad is to increase the parking by 15 spaces, which then allows for 15 cars to come off the streets. Now, that is along, so that you visualize this with me, if you were at Mr. Lee's house, you cross Carson, you cross the service road, and right on the last building along the service road, the last building before you get to the gym, is where those 15 spaces would go in. And again, the school requested that. If you look at that school, 15 cars probably does make a difference getting it off the street. It certainly would help with on weekends also, when Jefferson's used for other athletic events and AYSO and all of those things. Get as many cars as we can off that, off the service road and off the streets. Casimir Middle School, again, we're in the north area. We have concrete that's uneven. We fixed some of it. We haven't fixed others. This would give us an opportunity to do that. Torrance High School. This came from a board member. Mr. Gerson went to Torrance High. In the main building, I'm not sure what we call that main building, Mr. Lee, but the historical building that faces Carson.
Beverly Hills 90210.
Exactly.
West Beverly building.
Before the modernization, you walk through the doors to the corridor, and there was orange tile, orange glass tile. Now, we don't know, that wasn't original to that building, and we don't know where that orange tile came from. And I won't say his name, but he told me it was so ugly we had to do something with it. And
I used a different word.
Yes, you did. So what was done was to use a gray epoxy paint, which was painted over those tiles. A couple of other people said that's ugly too. So I was asked to put it on the list, which is what I did. And what we would do with that is we would strip all that off, meaning the old tile underneath the glass paint. We're not sure what's behind it because we don't have real good drawings on that in terms of that. But then we just plaster back where that tile was.
You might find something amazing underneath there.
Yeah, we could find something not too amazing.
Why not? But, Mr. Rondo will solve that.
Yes, he will.
And we're allowed to do that on that historical building portion?
Yes, we can, in that area.
I don't think those orange tiles were ever.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
those were
but they
not
still
original.
get really antsy when we mess with anything,
Yeah,
whether
but
it's original
actually,
or not.
we're probably putting it back to the way it was.
Yeah,
by-
and that
by
they
doing
usually
it.
like, but yeah, okay, thanks.
The stage columns, and you can see this is a small amount of money, it's $5,000, but if you're sitting in the seats in the auditorium at Torrance High School, which looks great, I mean, the great renovation that went on there, but your eye level is about the same level as the bottom of the stage, they're not real, but there are columns on either side. Well, through the years, what's happened, and there have been through many years, that the bottom of those columns has become uneven because pieces have broken off, those kinds of things. Think of this as a baseboard, except it has to be done by someone who is a real wood crafter, so that when you put those on, you won't see those uneven surfaces anymore. It will cover that. And so when you're looking at the stage and the beauty of the stage, that will be taken now into consideration, and your eyes won't go to those little pieces, again, a small part. We've now reached the Torrance, L, Adams, and Victor, and, oh, I'm sorry, West High. I skipped over West High. Concrete site work again. We have done a lot of concrete site work. Mr. Gerson was with me yesterday over there. We have done a lot of site work there. We actually had to rebuild the sidewalk because the city wanted us to rebuild the sidewalk. We have done that, but we still have some uneven areas in the quad areas over there. A little less money than at some of the other school sites, but we need to go ahead and fix them. I mean, they're trip hazards. Library ceiling. The library at West High School had a popcorn ceiling. It had asbestos. We needed to remove it. We did remove it. What was on the underneath of the popcorn ceiling was not a finish coat of plaster, but it's 2 stories up. So you're not there, looking directly on it. But one of our board members said it was pretty ugly. So we put this on the list for the board to consider. Now, it's important for us to know on this too, because the library is scheduled for new carpet. So we wouldn't want to put new carpet in and then do the ceiling. We want to do the ceiling, which is probably pretty messy again, because we're going to use popcorn again, but it's not asbestos popcorn up there. So it will be messy, so we would want to do the ceiling and then do the carpet afterwards. Which brings me down to the 3 sites. Dr. Stowe did such a good job of going through the history there. Roofs were actually evaluated in 06-07. So that we knew by the time that we finished all of the school sites that there could be some school sites who did not need roofing in 06-07, but 10 years later might. So you could, in fact, go ahead and use Measure Y funds for that. You have another option available to you, which would be, we believe that Measure T is going to come in with a surplus, and Measure T actually has an item in it which allows the district to use Measure T funds for roofing, electrical, plumbing. So you could, in fact, and it would be about a year from now before I would bring that back to you, because we want to get most of the expenditures done so that we're kind of safe in what we would tell you about the money you have available under Measure T for that purpose. So that would be another way, should you want to look at doing that. We believe that, according to the expert roofers, which I am not, that those roofs are probably good for 5 years. So you have about 5 years, a 5-year period where they still will be good. But my position always is, if you can take care of it, go ahead and take care of it, whether it be through Measure Y or telling me to bring it back under Measure T. Since we have funds, we probably, in my opinion, we should go ahead and fix that for the future.
Mrs. Reagans.
Meaning those roofs really are not leaking right now? It seems like everything's leaking right now.
They are not leaking.
Okay. I noticed that there's $2 million for Torrance L and for Victor. Did I do that right? Did I write that down correctly?
Yeah.
And those both actually ended up being at the end of the bond.
Yes.
So that just means that those projects were not in the scope of the original bond. Is that
is correct.
I wanted to point that out, that it's not negligence that we didn't do it to start with, or that we didn't have enough money to begin with. But when we looked at them 10 years ago, actually 12 years ago, some of them, they did not require this work.
Yeah, those, And they still are today, as I indicated. Those windows are operable. But the problem with them and why I recommend changing them will be that whole issue into the future with them. And we'll be back in the same place we were. We were that way all over the district in 30 schools. But, you'd have 28 who, no problem at all, where we replace windows. But, oh, by the way, we might have a problem in 2. Just doesn't work well for the school side or our staff.
Okay, and I had one more thing to say, that it looks kind of negligent that we let our buildings get into such terrible disrepair in 2006 and 2007, but you and I both know, as well as many of the community members know, we did make attempts, 3 different attempps, I think, along the way. Well, 3 in present day, well, I think of it.
In the 90s, they were 1 for 4.
Yeah. So there were many attempts to get bonds passed prior to that, and there were some factions in the community that were not helpful in that respect. So when we finally did get them passed, we've done what we can do with the monies that were forthcoming, so.
Well, I think part of I agree, Mrs. Reagan's, and by the way, Mrs. Reagan's was a trooper and was with me, and I still remember, for 42 meetings, so, out in the community where we talked about this. But clearly, what I walked away with, and the message from, and I think it was absolutely correct, the message from the community was, it is a mess, and we're going to support you, but you fix it.
And do it well.
And along with that, one of the things that we all have had to point out was, along the way, there were always comments made, well, you're going to run out of money, you won't be able to finish, blah, 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 blah. No. But we took, and which I think still is the way to do things, we brought to the board from the architects a rating of the schools from worst to best. Worst was Magruder, notwithstanding Hull, of course, but worst was Magruder, best was Torrance. And we worked right on through with that whole piece. So obviously, we knew when it came to Magruder and some of those other schools, we were going to have to outlay a lot of cash in the very beginning, Torrance High, for example, to do that.
Can I?
Yeah, Mr. Gerson.
Just to share my experience with the soil and the concrete. The former school site that I worked at was out toward the field, and so I got to experience the movement of the concrete, where you would come back after winter break, and all of a sudden you didn't need to use the foot on the door anymore because it would scrape against the concrete because it had slid over the rainy winter break. And then the next semester, your doorstop wouldn't even reach the concrete because of the sliding. So we do not want any trip hazards.
Yeah, and that is a true story.
This trek started even a little before those days, because we have the 2006 bond that didn't quite make it, which actually ended up being a blessing in disguise. But in the 90s, we're 2 for 3. Or in the 2000s, we're 2 for 3, but in the 90s, it was 1 for 4. And Measure R was actually only half of what the original amount was that they started in that process. And it was 2 to 3 years later, so it was, for all intents and purposes, destined to fail, because the expectations of the community were such of the original bond, yet the bond in the past was 50% of what the original bond was. So it's been nice, because what they haven't brought up is we have cleaned up, Mr. Schlegel's back there doing it feverishly, but cleaning up the outstanding issues with Measure R that were never done, that we're getting done now. So, when this is done a year from now or so, we'll have Department of State architects signs off on everything. It's done. We close the book, and there's no downstream liabilities like we had for Measure R.
Correct.
And so that was, to some extent, the unknown as we started this process, and remember having to go, oh, wow, or better sometimes when we had to deal with that stuff. So that was good. I think this stuff, there's nothing particularly sexy in all of this.
No.
Maybe the tile at Torrance High, but but I mean, this is all kind of that infrastructure stuff that you just, a lot of the stuff you maybe pay for once and you have to pay for another 40 or 50 years,
Yeah.
like rock boxes and stuff. But I have no problem delaying the roofing part and get this stuff done now, especially since, we've got Balfour, Beatty, and everybody out there to do it, and then bring back the roofing next year. And
Next
the
March.
other thing is, we still have state bond money out there that we haven't been given.
We do, and we
We have
haven't,
no idea when we're going to get it.
well, we don't. But, that's a whole different piece, which we certainly can talk about at some point. When we're working with these, and we're working with T also next March, let's say, the board and superintendent are required that the projects I bring you comply with the original resolutions. Legally, we don't have a choice. With the state bond funds that the district's going to receive, just a matter of when the district's going to receive those funds, you are not under that obligation. Because the project which you are receiving the funds for is already closed. So, when we've closed with certification, then we used our own money. And we still get the state funds, and as long as it's a capital project, you can use it for any project you want to use it for, but it has to be capital. Cannot be used for anything else.
And it's matching funds.
It is, and also, we have discussed a little bit about a term called arbitrage, but those state funds would not be under arbitrage.
Oh.
Because they're not sold as bonds through TUSD.
So a couple questions I have. For Measure T, does that include drainage or not?
Measure T, in my estimation, does not include
So you
drainage.
couldn't put the drainage off till next year for Measure T, you're saying?
You could not.
You could not.
I don't think it would be a legal expenditure.
Okay, second question is then, in terms of the surplus funds, obviously these are all estimates, right?
They are.
So let's say that the estimates come over. Let's say it goes over 6.5. How are you going to prioritize which comes first?
Actually, I'm going to ask you to do that.
We're going to prioritize for you.
Well, yeah,
Okay,
well.
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, we'll
How are
have
you
a,
gonna be the project?
well, I think we have to have a conversation about
Okay.
that.
That's why we get the big money, we get to make those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not funny.
Good, okay, we got a motion, we got a second. We got to modify the motion, and I'll throw out a modified motion that we do everything except for the roofs, which gets us to the number. So
Second.
will the maker modify their motion?
The guesstimated number?
And the seconder will? Okay, good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, good.
Mr. Lee, I know we've completed that. May I make one other
Yeah.
comment, just for clarification for the board's purpose? I appreciate the board taking action on this. The windows are critical. As you know, they are custom-made windows for us. There's a 12-week lead time by the manufacturer. So which we normally don't do, on next Monday's quarterly construction meeting, we will have an item on there for the windows, so that then we can go out and bid and do all the rest of the stuff we got to do with them, to get that 12-week lead time in, so that we can have it as a summer project. So thank you.
Reagan's.
Can I add one more thing, that I appreciate the rapidity of our construction and maximizing the market before prices became astronomical and we couldn't afford what we needed to do. So we did a lot of things, more
did.
things than we would have otherwise been able to do if not
We
for the
did.
recession, et cetera. So
Yeah, we did. And you know what? It was sheer luck that we
Yeah, it
just hit
was.
the business cycle, the construction
Yeah,
cycle
the 06
at the
bonds
right
in the
time.
past, We wouldn't have had the
Yeah.
08, 09, 10 price.
And Mr. Lee couldn't have brought up a gym for Hull Middle School and the new middle school, which then actually fit within the budget, So, a lot of those things we were able to do with that.
Well, I never thought we'd get done, and we're getting to the end of it.
I know, isn't that amazing?
We may miss those guys in the third row back there, who knows?
You're not going to miss it.
Yeah, probably not. Anyway, okay, we're to consent. I would really like a motion to approve them all.
I'll make a motion to approve them all.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good. Hey, Mrs. Reagan's?
Actually, I don't have a report on SoCal Rock because we have not had a meeting since we last met, but I do have a couple of things
Good.
that I would like to talk about. One is that even though I didn't pull it as a specific item, we did approve a T-Mobile cellular service subscription. And I understand that that was a cost savings movement and an attempt to minimize our cell phone expenditures. And I appreciate that on the part of staff for making that happen. I know that they're a thrifty company. I wanted to identify the resolutions that were on this agenda because a couple of them are kind of important to me. One is that March of 2019, and I do know that we're almost at the end of March, but that is Music in Our Schools Month. Mr. Comita, we do appreciate your music, we really do. Better late than never, and we really do want to recognize that. And you can continue into April and still support our music.
Is he here?
He is not here.
Oh, I was,
No, but I know he's out there listening.
well, if he brings by the ukuleles, that would be a really
Oh, did you hear that?
last time.
I will
was president
transmit
of
that
the
to him.
board. He did that.
Yes, he will do that, too. There's also a resolution proclaiming April 2019 as School Library Month. And I ran the library at Yukon Elementary School for many, many years. And that's how our libraries operate at our elementaries. But they're very important for all of our kids at every school level. And then there's also a proclamation, a resolution proclaiming April 8th through 12th as California Adult Education Week. And last but not least, certainly not least, April 23rd is School Bus Drivers Day. So some of our kids actually still ride buses. And those of you who do, please thank your bus drivers for the service that they are providing for you and getting you safely to school and home. Oh, yes, and all those in fact, if not for our bus drivers, we would not be doing any of our field trips and all of our additional things. And the swimmers, and the kids taking classes at SoCal Rock and a variety of things that they provide for our schools. So thank you, bus drivers. I did want to mention that this past couple of weeks, I've had a chance to be at Seaside and meet with some teachers and observe some things in classrooms, and I really appreciate them having hosted me, actually, and Mr. Lee joined us too, and at Towers Elementary School too. So it's always nice to see what's going on at our school sites. We had the Visions of Unity 20th anniversary meeting, and I actually have some pencils to share with you guys. Real pencils, they still exist. Here, pass them around, take a couple that actually say 20th anniversary. It's actually a diversity-oriented arts competition that our students participate in, and it's been run with the Human Relations Committee from the county for 20 years now. And it's a wonderful endeavor for our kids. And last but not least, the Torrance Council of PTAs had their Honorary Service Awards dinner. Some of us were there to see hundreds of people that provided thousands of hours, volunteer hours, to our schools and to our district. And I want to thank them for having done that and appreciate the PTAs for honoring those people and sharing them with us. And that's it. Thank you.
Anybody else on the board?
Yes, please.
Mr. Gerson.
I'm sorry. I want to take a few minutes as well. Because today was my 98th day in office. I kind of feel, as we approach our first 100 days up here, that I kind of wanted to make a statement. At the last 3 schools I visited, there was one question that I was asked each time, which was, so what have you done so far? And I was like, it's only been 3 months, but I reflected, and I have done quite a bit. Since I was a long-time Torrance Unified teacher, I already had strong ties with teachers, and I wanted to connect more with parents and introduce myself. So I reached out to the PTA unit presidents and asked if I could come to one of their meetings. And I want to thank the following PTAs and PTSAs, which I'm going to do in alphabetical order, for inviting me to one of their meetings. Adams Elementary, Arlington Elementary, Arnold Elementary, Birtland Middle, Lincoln Elementary, Madrona Middle, Seaside Elementary, South High, Victory Elementary, Walteria Elementary, Wood Elementary, and Yukon Elementary. I didn't ask Callie Mayer because I served for several years on their board. They know me and how to get a hold of me. I had the opportunity to meet with counselors and psychologists and the Torrance Teachers Association and district administration around the implementation of the Signs of Suicide program. And I really wanted to commend Mr. Egan. It was his first 2 weeks as a senior director, and he rolled up his sleeves and I think really turned an idea into a full-fledged program. And I'm really hopeful because of his spirit of collaboration and cooperation with many people around the district, that was a really good sign as we work toward mending fences, responding to deficiencies, continuing to grow current programs and creating new ones. And I mean programs, not deficiencies. I had the privilege to attend the State of the Region presentation and Ted Lieu and Maxine Waters speaking, and the Black History Celebration sponsored by the Torrance Area Chamber of Commerce as a representative of Torrance Unified. Had a few meetings with the Torrance Teachers Association, got to meet with the Torrance Education Foundation, attended 3 CIF championship games and Adopt a School ceremony, Torrance Council PTA's Career and College Fair, and then I could keep listing more that we've all gotten to do together. But last week, I had the privilege of traveling to Sacramento to lobby for education and sharing facts and figures related to our schools and our city when it comes to the rising epidemic that is juvenile vaping. I want to thank our John Pearson for assembling district data. And I also want to thank our mayor, Pat Fury, the city attorney, Patrick Sullivan, and our police chief, Eve Irvine, and their staffs. They help also gather statistics. I learned a lot about state law and about the City of Torrance ordinances surrounding alcohol and vaping. And the Torrance Police Department provided me with some important statistics, which was vital in my argument that this is not just a school issue, a school crisis, but it's a crisis that we are going to be fighting in our schools, not only to protect our kids, but also to heal those who are now affected by addiction because of vaping. So thank you to Torrance for putting me up here, giving me the opportunity to help guide the positive change. And this evening, thank you to my fellow board members who put me on the City of Torrance Strategic Plan Committee. And thank you to my wife, who knows that she's not going to see me any Monday night now because of because of board meetings and because of that. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I was going to congratulate you for volunteering for the strategic plan, but there you go. So that's good.
Done.
Good luck with that. Hey, Mr. Hahn.
I just want to say thanks to all the people who are involved with the bonds on the Bond Oversight Committee especially, and everyone. We talk about all these buildings, and so one of the things is that obviously my kids, we moved here 10 years ago, and we love our schools. I think because my kid goes to Hull, I think we experienced the glory of it all, but we don't know how it was in the past. But we really do appreciate all of our schools, the ones that my kids have gone to. So I want to thank the Bond Oversight, the Balfour Beatty, and I know it's not easy, I know it's not perfect, I know there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong, but no matter what, if we have 6.5 million over surplus and we're getting all that we want or needed, not maybe all we wanted, but what we need, it's great. And so I want to thank Dr. Mannon for making it all happen and all the people that were very involved in that. So it's really exciting, as well as the HSA people and Torrance Council PTAs. It was a wonderful evening. It gives me hope to see all the wonderful volunteers. It makes our city great. It makes our schools great. When I watched all those people being celebrated on Friday night, it was truly a wonderful experience.
Thank you. Good, 100 days since then. Okay, we're doing pretty good. So, as long as I don't screw it up. It's 5 minutes after 9. I'll take a motion for adjournment.
Mr. Lee, there are a lot of students downstairs that are kind of come up for signatures.
Oh, downstairs.
Okay, all the kids downstairs, I want you to start, I want to hear feet coming up those stairways, and we'll, all five, everybody up here can sign stuff.
Better hurry up.
Get up here fast, and we'll get this thing done. Adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second,
Boom.
I second,
Go.
yeah. Yeah. All right.